Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Steve and I are coming at you from the Cleveland studio, one day removed from issues number 1 and 2 on the Ohio ballot both being approved. And I was actually kind of surprised. I shouldn't have been, but they were getting a lot of national attention too. I was watching MSNBC and CNN this morning, and the Ohio issue 1, which was in essence, a guarantee that the Constitution would not be, the state Constitution would not be amended to add an abortion ban. And issue 2 was legalization of adult cannabis, something I've been squawking about for a long time. And it's finally here. So issue 1 passes, issue 2 passes. A couple things. One, the number of people who were so passionate on either side of both these issues, especially issue 1, it's over, folks. Whether you like it or not, women are not going to let 1960s-like anti-abortion laws pass without a fight. And we talked about this a long time ago, and I said, I think this is going to, the issues like issue 1 were going to be nothing but damaging to the Republican cause. You showed me a series of tweets when we were just having lunch, and it was literally a woman saying, we need to stand on our principles and not give into this. And someone said, don't you like winning elections? She was like, yes, but I like sticking to my principles more. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think, so, one, it's not over. Like, this election, right, is, and for right now, issue 1 is ingrained, so they can't go and make an amendment, make any changes without, a lot of, some things that aren't going to happen, right? But Republicans aren't going to stop trying to get abortion banned. They believe that their religious beliefs outweigh the rights of individuals, and therefore they will continue to try to push this. They are zealots.
Yeah.
Right? That's the definition of zealotry, right? Like taking your religious beliefs and then imposing them on people through political means. And this is what they are, like, they've been trying to do it, right? They've been trying to get Roe versus Wade overturned for 40 years, right? So they finally got it, and they got pushback. They are completely stunned, right? Which is the part that blows my mind, right? The people out there are just like, well, I don't understand how this could happen. There's so many of us. It's just like there's millions of us. Like, yeah, you're right, there are. But there's 170 million registered voters or eligible voters in the United States, and right, and even if there's 30 million of you, right, there's probably about 100 million people who don't agree with you. Right now, I don't know what those numbers are.
Sure,
but listen, issue 1 passed by a relatively wide margin. I think it was like 11 or 12 points, right? Or maybe 15 by the time it was done. Because once they got Cuyahoga County was the last one. I had a friend who was texting me last night. She's like, "Oh, Steve, it's getting close. Why'd they call it so early?" I was like, "Well, I mean, statistically in mathematics, like, this is what the gap is. Like, there's very little chance that this gap is going to close that much." Right, and she was kind of sweating it out until about 10 o'clock, and then she couldn't take the stress, so she just went to sleep. But
really,
yeah, I mean, and look, that's kind of what you're dealing with on the other side. That's how desperate people are. Not desperate, that's the wrong word, but passionate people are. Like she was genuinely concerned that it being called at 9 o'clock was too early. Now, if you had a situation like we had with Arizona and the election, and it was a really, really close race, and if it was only like a few points apart, right? Like, if it was only like 2 or 3 points, then yeah, I could see having some reservation. But at that point, it was a 12 or 13 point lead. I think it got as low as maybe 11 points, and then I know by the time it was all said and done, it was about a 14, 15 point win, that's a big, that's a wide margin in an election. You had pretty decent voter turnout in the state, but I mean, it was a resounding message, I think, to conservatives. Like, look, you guys need to think about your platform, right? Now, they won't right? And maybe they will, and I don't think they're going to change it. What I think they'll do is clearly this is not working for them, so they will shift to woke ideology, and we'll probably hear more and more about what's being taught in schools and critical race theory and trans stuff.
Sorry, but the one thing that keeps getting said, and I've heard a few folks on national networks push back on it, is Republicans keep pushing the notion that the left wants legal abortion up until and even after birth. No one wants that. That's not a valid. I mean, it's complete horseshit. No one wants to carry a child for 8 months and 3 weeks, and on a whim say, I'm tired of this now. So I'm.
Yeah, I mean, now look. Are there examples where there were very, very late term abortions? Sure, but those were very isolated circumstances where the life of the mother was in danger.
Right.
Like, you're not going to find an example of some teeny bopper that just comes in, or like they love to use black people in these sort of instances. So someone just comes in after 8.5 months and says, "I don't want the baby anymore. Take it out." And the doctor says, "Okay, sure." Right? Like,
it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. It's not real. It's the boogeyman. It's a, red herring. But I mean, it's effective because, frankly, people are stupid, right?
Yeah. I'm not gonna
and people aren't going to look beyond headlines and sound bites. People aren't going to look into the issue other than through means that will, confirm their bias and tell them what they want to hear. And so it's just easy to throw out there whatever it is you want to throw out there, especially on the conservative side, and not get any sort of pushback and get support for it, for that reason. So they can say things like, "Oh, they want," like, the thing that kills me is that I heard someone else say this, like, the Democrats and the radical liberal left, whatever, they want abortions after birth. I'm like, well, that's
murder.
That's not. I don't think that's how abortions work, bud. Once they're born, it's not an abortion anymore. And no one wants that, right? Now, I mean, if you want to point to a case where a mother has a baby, doesn't want the baby anymore, and then puts it in a trash can or drops it off at the, okay, all right, that's awful and everything, but that's, again, not this, right? That's also a person who didn't go through didn't have any sort of medical attention, help, support, whatever, and just tried to do it on their own, which that's a whole different sort of circumstances, and you look at that differently through the lens of the law than you do a medical professional performing a specific action. And, I just do want to point out, though, that I don't believe that this is over. I think that conservatives, Republicans, whoever, will continue to try to figure out ways to circumvent this, right? You're going to have a team of lawyers who are going to look at issue one and figure out exactly how they can try to
dance around it, too.
Either dance around it or use it to get something on the ballot to have this to bring this up again. I don't see how they could, but they may, right? And I haven't really put the screws to it to try to figure it out. But when it does, I think they'll see, no matter what they come up with, because they will come up with something, I promise you. It's not going to be tomorrow, right? But within the next year or two, I suspect that there will be something new brewing. We'll start to hear about it. It'll take form. Whether it's worth a shit or not, who knows? But I could see 4 years from now something else being on the ballot to try to ban abortion, right? Using issue one as its base. So, like, all right, if issue one says this, then if we say it this way, we can get it through, and then that'll pass, right? Like, so I don't think by any stretch of the imagination you can say this is done. I think this particular leg of the race is done, but you have to be, like, some of the legal scholars that support these issues and that support pro-choice and everything else, they have to continue to watch what's happening legislatively behind closed doors, seeing kind of what the undercurrent is at some of these different, professional organizational conferences and meetings, and hearing what the vibe is. Because I think something else will come down the pike, and this fight will continue.
I hate that this is bounced around the way it is from both sides. Anyone who says, from conception after that, it's murder, and there's no exceptions. Health of the mother. I've heard stories that obviously I can't verify, but stories of women having non-viable fetuses in their body. They just need to get it out.
I mean, I haven't experienced it, but people close to me, I have two people close to me who have been in that situation with non-viable fetuses in them recently who had to leave the state to go get it resolved.
And it's because doctors are like, we're not sure what our legal standing
Won't
is.
touch it.
Yep.
Won't touch it. And with the way that some of these rules were put into place, like that's the right call by them. Like they could lose their license, they could be arrested, they could go to jail. And it's terrible. It's terrible that you put the doctors in that position. It's even worse that you put a woman in that position where she needs medical care, and you're saying, yeah, you could be. There's no reason why you can't get it here other than we're saying that you can't. And so now you need to get on a plane or get in your car, hope everything is okay with you medically, go to a whole ass another state and have this dealt with there.
Right.
Hope you got the means to do it. And if not, good, we want you to suffer, basically. What else could it be?
When you draw that line in the sand and have whenever you do something with no exceptions, especially on this issue, you're going to get people like me who raised Catholic. I mean, I've had a few girls I've been with miss periods and gone, I really don't want to have a kid right now, but hey, I did this and this happened and now we'll see how it goes. Thankfully, nothing came of it. But, I couldn't go through that in my personal life. Having said that, who the fuck am I to tell someone else? When you see this as a purely black and white line in the sand issue, really on either side, I've got a problem with your logic because you're not.
The problem is that the other side is pro-choice, right? The other side is like, look, we don't really care what you do, Puritan woman, right? If you want to carry non-viable fetuses all the way through term, then so be it. Don't make me do that, though.
Right.
Like that. I mean, this is one where I think we're on a little bit like I think the examples of a pro-choice person saying going too far are like minuscule, right? Like there may be some crazy.
I've heard some people make some pretty wild.
Person that says that a person should be able to have an abortion up to the day the baby is born, right? Okay, are those people out there? Sure, but I think there's so few of them. And no one takes those people seriously that I don't know if I can really count them. But maybe they exist. But I think the extremism on this issue is coming from the right. And I think even the extremism that is that's cast upon the left, right, comes from the right. Right. Like it's just their rhetoric that they make up and then they say, yeah, see, they're doing this, right? And then you're like, well, they never said that. At no point was that ever said, or that where are you seeing that written, or
they're creating straw men, and then
right. And then their main source is that Project Veritas, right? And that Peter O'Keefe, and that whole thing's gone to shit anyway because they got rid of Peter O'Keefe, and then they're trying to bring him back, and they do those undercover stings where they. They'll get a person, like they'll take a person out on a date, right? They'll record it, and then they'll edit up the video to make it seem like the person says something crazy. Or, you get a person on a date that's just running their mouth about something, and it's just like, oh, well, it's firsthand from this guy who's been drinking all night and is trying to get laid. Like, if that's not ripe for bullshit, I don't know what is coming from every guy that's ever tried to get laid. Right? While drinking, chances are you're going to say a lot of bullshit about whatever. So I don't know. I think on this one, the extremism mostly comes from the right. You're not going to find nearly as many credible examples on the left. And I think this one lies with your conservative.
And it's a moralizing issue. I always view these folks as like, I want to show you that I'm on God's side. And I always like to think, God doesn't need your help. He can handle this just fine. I know I just gendered God, but there's a guy who I see all the time from this neighborhood, drives around, he rides a bike, carries a cross, and goes to the Planned Parenthood site over one town over. A site that does not perform abortions. They're out in front protesting and harassing people going in.
Oh, the guy who goes over in Rocky River on Center Ridge?
Yes.
What's funny is, when I was going through my outpatient rehab for booze, he would be out there. Right?
Okay.
Like, I'd see him all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, like, at first I didn't know what he was out there. So one day I asked him, like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, you know what they do here. And at first I thought, like, because I'm going through rehab. I'm like, yeah, I do. Right? Like, thinking that he's talking about drunks like me. And I couldn't figure out, like, what the fuck is your beef? Like, I'm trying to figure shit out. Like, why are you such an asshole, right? And so, like, he kind of rambles on, and it's very incoherent, as you might.
I'm not shocked. I've never spoken to the guy, but I've seen him 100 times.
And then what I realized, he said something for the babies, and I was like, wait, you think that this is like an abortion clinic, right?
Right.
You know, and he's like, I don't think the Lord tells me so.
Oh, great.
I'm like, okay.
I didn't know we had an inside source
Yeah,
here.
I didn't realize it was the guy you were talking about. But yeah, I told him, I was like, well, I think your source kind of got some information wrong. Like, they don't do that here, right? And he's like, well, yeah, no, they do. The Lord tells me so. I'm like, okay, well, I've been in the building. Like, I'm here because I'm a drunk, and I am going through rehab, and that's what most of this building is. And I was like, there is a Planned Parenthood, but they do intake there. They do basic
breast exams,
right? They do exams. They do STD testing, but there's those they don't perform those services here. Like, the building, the building was built in like 1960. It is not set up for any much medical, and they're not doing abortions there. They don't even. I know for a fact they don't even hand out the pill there, just because I did some other work after with the Planned Parenthood, but they don't do any of those types of services at that particular location. Right now, you don't have to go far to figure out where they do, but it's not there where that guy was standing. And then he was really mad at me, and like, he didn't hit me with the sign, but shooed me away with his cross.
Okay.
And so I was like, all right, I'll leave you alone. But yeah, so we do have inside.
Okay. Yeah, inside sources. Very good.
That was a couple years ago.
No, I saw him on his bike just the other day, and I would put money, given that issue 1 just passed, that if we drove past that right now, there would be protesters outside that building. And again, you're protesting a building that doesn't do the thing you're protesting. Right. You might as well be standing on the random street corner that we hit political rallies all the time. At least there, people will see you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only beef with...
Please don't, because you'll fuck up my neighborhood.
Right. My only beef with it is just knowing why I was there. If you've got protesters on the outside standing in, and you're, on the fence about trying to get your shit together, and then you see protesters standing outside, that could deter you. And, I know that it was helpful for me, so I would hate for people to miss out on an opportunity to fix their shit because some fucking crazy dude is out there with a cross yelling at them because he thinks that they're doing abortions there. They think that he's yelling at people that are trying to get sober, and, they drive off. That would be really unfortunate.
That could be. And I imagine there's a lot of anxiety that goes into walking into those places because you're dealing with a lot of shit. And having someone confronting you when you're already, even if it's not, I mean, no one's thinking you are getting an abortion. But what was that terrible movie with Schwarzenegger?
Where he was pregnant. Yeah.
Oh, God. You know what? I'm not going to put any mental power. It wasn't Twins. That was the one he did with Danny DeVito.
I feel like that was part of Twins, though.
Was it?
Twins was so bad. I was young, but I remember only seeing it once. And it was such a, it pissed me off because I was such an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, obviously. Well, I guess not obviously if you don't know me. But, I mean, I was a huge Schwarzenegger fan. And then just the idea that Danny DeVito would be related to it, it was so unappealing to me. But I'm almost positive part of that movie, for some reason, he was pregnant.
I don't think it's the same movie because I don't think. No, he's made more than one terrible movie, Steve.
True.
I watched Commando not that long ago, and that movie's. If that was trying to be a comedy.
First of all, Commando is amazing. Commando is an amazing. It's amazingly bad.
It's amazingly bad.
Right. When he goes to the island where
Bennett.
Bennett, yeah. I don't know why I wanted to call him Broderick, but where Bennett is, like, he's in this plane, and all the shit that he takes with him, it's like, you can't, like, what do you do? You can't care. You're also... Never mind.
Yeah, we go on. I think we've done this before, actually. It's been a while. But
why was Bennett wearing a fishnet tank top? Like...
You know what? All right, so I've done... this will be a good segue. This will be a good segue.
Like, who puts on that? And that was so big in the 80s and the 90s, like dudes wearing fishnet tank tops. Like, why did you guys think that was tough? I didn't understand it then.
Okay, I was never a
I'm not
tank
saying
guy.
you, but I'm just saying, like, that generation, like, you look at Motley Crue and got, like, I don't understand. Like, and then those same people got so much beef with trans people now. Right? Like, what? Like, how the fuck are you sitting there listening to Motley Crue, right? Looking at the videos of Tommy Lee with better eye makeup, right, than any woman at the time, and you guys got beef for trans people. I don't get it.
This is going to be a good segue because we've had multiple conversations about where I watched a movie for the first time under the influence of cannabis, and it's like I'm watching a whole different movie. Yeah. I'm watching Commando High. I'm definitely going to do this. I have not done it yet.
I mean, but Point Break was a big one.
That was a big one. Top Gun was a big one for me. Like going, how the fuck does Goose get a Polaroid camera into the cockpit of an F-16? Didn't click to me until I'm high going, how the fuck did Goose... And then...
Like, where did you put it? Where did you pull it from?
Like they allow that shit. Like, the Navy doesn't have real strict rules, but what you put in a thing that goes faster than sound.
I also... anyway, yes. Lots of questions.
So, bringing us to issue 2. Recreational marijuana is now legal has been passed to be legalized in the state of Ohio. Thank goodness. I've been so wrong about this for so long. And it's still not nationally fixed, so I haven't I don't get to wave that flag yet. But at least
when they do pass it, you don't get to wave a flag. Because
waving a flag.
Because every time they bring it up, you're like, oh, there's a bill. I'm like, Jim, right? And you're just like, well, I don't even want to talk about it.
We've had that exact conversation multiple times. But now it's legal in the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
So now when I go to Michigan, I can buy my stuff because it'll probably take me a year to figure out how to sort it out locally. But, I mean, realistically, I did that before it was passed and didn't have a whole lot of concerns. I did take some precautions of, like, hiding stuff and not consuming it and driving, but other than that, I really wasn't worried coming back from Michigan with a
I mean, and I guess my thing with you was like, dude, I take weed with me on planes, like throughout the country, right? Like I have a vape pen with me, edible, whatever, in my bag. I got stopped by TSA once. And I was like, oh, it's got to be something weed related, right? That's the only thing. There was nothing. I took my cigar lighters out. There's no way. I made sure I had all the right amounts in my toiletry bag. And I was like, the only thing it could be is somebody having an issue with like my pen or my edibles, right? That got to be the only thing. So they pulled me aside. I knew it was coming, and they're like, "This should be. Yeah, it's my bad. Oh, is there anything sharper?" No, it's not. They go through. Take the weed pen out, set it down. Take the edibles out, set them down. Take my like calculator out, set like all that stuff out, right? And like, don't say anything about that shit. But you know what I had in my bag?
Go ahead. Nail clippers?
No, it was a trigger for an AR-15.
Oh, okay.
So I had ordered a trigger right in the mail. And it came. It's a real nice trigger, 3-pound pull, flat. It's beautiful. But I had got it. I had picked it up at my UPS mailbox, threw it in my work bag. I think I pulled it out. Like I was sitting in my truck. I was looking at it. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I pull it out, out of the packaging. And then I just throw it back in my work bag without the envelope. And then like the next day it was flying out. We were, me, Nikki, and Josh were going to Vegas. And I had, I throw those names out there like people know the fuck I'm talking about, but whatever. But for some reason, I forgot to pull it out of my bag and throw it in the gun safe. So I pull it out, and then that's what they were looking at, which is the right thing, right call. But they didn't know, they literally didn't know what it was because it was a full trigger, drop-in trigger casing. So if you're not familiar with guns, and it didn't look like a standard trigger for a gun, right? It's a flat face.
So it doesn't have a trigger guard in the...
It doesn't... Well, it does have a trigger guard, but it doesn't, because it's just the trigger itself, no, there's no guard.
Okay.
Right? It's just the mechanism, and it doesn't... if you're not familiar with what a trigger looks like outside of a gun, you don't realize it. So they couldn't figure out what it was, and they're like, is this some sort of tool? And I was like, yes. And they're like, okay, I don't see any sort of, Bob, can you look at this? The dude came over and looked at it, and they're like, all right, it's fine. And then, oddly enough, coming back from Vegas, I kept it in that same bag. I didn't have any issue with it. But then they just put all the shit back in, including the weed, right? The pen, the edibles, they put it right back in, didn't even bat an eye, didn't think about it. So to you, I think you were going a little bit overboard, but they don't give, no one cares.
You're right.
No one cares. Talking to the DEA guys, right, that I know, they're like, look, it's so far off our radar, right? Now, if it's with other shit, right? If it's weed and meth and heroin and all that other stuff, then okay, fine, right? But no one cares about the personal, and the only people who do care, right, are shitty cops in urban areas, right, who use it to hold up people, to hold up young black kids. That's literally the only people who still care. Right?
We've heard stories about kid gets the hell beat out of him by a cop and gets charged with, I detected the smell of marijuana, so I confronted them, and then they beat the shit out of this kid. Yes. I mean, the one kid got his eye. I remember this one story from the Serial podcast where a kid got his orbital bone broken, and it was he had a joint in his pocket.
There was a story not that long ago, and the kid was white.
Okay.
And he had weed on him, and they beat the shit out of this kid. Literally broke his face. And it was just such an awful story, right? And because it was, the kids had done something, they found, they found weed in the kid's pocket. Who knows when they found the weed in the kid's pocket, but they beat the kid really, really, really bad. This is a long time coming in the state of Ohio because they had already legalized it.
They've decriminalized
decriminalized it. Okay, with the semantics, but it was legal to get medical marijuana in Ohio. You had to jump through a lot of hoops to get it. You had to get a card, and there was some gray area in there because people were, pulling up injuries from 30 years ago and saying that they were still bothering them and all that other stuff, and that was kind of gray. But now they've said, okay, I mean, you can do the whole medical thing if you want, but now it's recreational. So here's what it is. I think adults can have up to 6 plants individually. A household can have up to 12 plants. Or I think it's maybe 6 ounces or something like that, which 6 ounces is a lot of weed. But, it's relatively open, right?
Yeah.
And so... it's good. That's a good thing. The next big step is federal, and I just don't know when we get there. It's going to be. Could it be something that Biden does if he gets a sense that he's going out and not coming back into the White House? Could he try to get something through?
I don't think he wants to. I think he's got the fuddy-duddy old white guy thing going on.
Exactly. Which is why I said I think it'll be a while before we get it, and now I don't even know what the window or the time frame looks like for national legalization. Congress is just such a mess that it's not going to come from them, which is a fucking shame because it should, right? Mm-hmm. How many of these congressmen represent districts any number, somebody who represents Ohio, right, should bring this, right? Who's in our district? Who do we got? Who replaced Marsha Fudge? Chantel Brown, right? Bring it.
Yeah.
Right? What are we doing? Right? And get bipartisan support behind and do it in a real and a serious way. And I don't know. Maybe you got to wait till Mitch McConnell is out and not your Senate Majority Leader, right? I don't know. Yeah, I know. Well, no. Who's it? Oh, it's Chuck. It's or Schumer.
Yeah,
or
Chuck Schumer. Yep.
One of the both. Wait till the vampires are out. Mitch seems like he's not long for the Senate or
the planet
Earth, as he keeps pausing.
Yeah, he's looking rough.
And he's been McConnell's looked rough for a while. I know he had some stuff. He had some real bad bruising and stuff going on with his hands a couple years back, like during COVID, and then now he's had these incidents where he's pausing and all that stuff. But my point is, like, we got to get rid of the old guard before I feel comfortable having the conversation that you want to have about national legalization. As long as you've got Chuck Schumer, as long as you've got Mitch McConnell, as long as you've got Joe Biden,
they throw Biden in there too,
and that ilk of those people who were like literally in their teens watching Reefer Madness, you got to get rid of them. Right, because they've clearly shown they don't have any desire to be a part of that, right? Which is crazy because Mitch McConnell jumped through a lot of hoops to get hemp legalized.
Correct.
Right? Why?
Because his state grows a lot of hemp, and
yes, right. But he won't
And they played fast and loose with that, right? So anything that came from industrial hemp was now legal, and then folks found ways to say, well, this came from industrial hemp. Well, we just get a different form of THC out of it. So
here's your Delta 8.
Here's your Delta 8. Go nuts. And I proved the hard way that stuff still works.
It can be hit or miss, but boy, sometimes when it hits, whew.
And that's to a bigger point, though. It's also that Delta 8 stuff was, as far as I know, completely unregulated. One thing you have to say about states like Michigan that have legal recreational weed, everything gets tested. You know the quantities you're taking. When you take an edible from...
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to say that. Do you care about all that, though?
Yeah.
Do you?
I do.
How long were people buying weed off a dude on the street?
I think exactly, and they were sometimes getting fucked up because of it.
Yeah, laced with all that other stuff. But like, I don't know. Like, I look on the back of those packages and I see all that stuff and the testing, and I pretend like I care. Like I don't know what any of that means.
Okay,
now you're a chemical engineer, but
okay,
but I don't. At the end of the day, I look for how much THC is in this shit. How high am I going to get? Right? Like, and now
that's what I'm doing too.
I take that into account because typically, like, my main time of consumption is at night, about an hour before bed, right? Which is when you get some text from me.
I was going to say, I know exactly when your edibles kick in because I'll get a text of Bruce Lee getting undressed or taking his shirt off to fight
Chuck Norris.
With the soundtrack being Careless Whisper, which I have still not forgiven you for.
I don't want you to.
Okay.
Because it's amazing.
To all those listening who just quit listening to us for good, I don't blame you. So hopefully you're still around.
But I mean, like, so I do need to know that to a degree because, again, I can't like take it too late and end up like still crushed when I wake up if I have to wake up early. But other than that, man, I don't like. I want it pure. I don't. Please don't lace it with formaldehyde or fentanyl or whatever.
Right.
But and it's important that we have quality control. I'm not dismissing that, but the way people talk about it, it's like, dude, you're not like. No one is reading that. Other than you, again, you're an outlier because you're a chemical engineer and that's in the pharma industry. That's your world. Okay, but if I'm talking to 99.9% of the rest of the people I know who none of them are what you are, they don't. They don't.
You're right. But I feel much better taking something that I knew came out of a commercially manufactured facility versus some dude. I mean, all right, I made brownies at one time. And
you did.
And they were potent, but I really had no idea what the potency was.
No.
And didn't you house a whole one?
I did.
And you ended up into a different plane of existence?
Different dimension.
Okay. And this is someone who, in theory,
that was a lot of my fault because...
It's entirely your fault.
I didn't take into account what type of... I just thought they were regular brownies. I think I smelled the weed and figured, they probably aren't that strong. And I did not stop to, like, confer with you on what was happening.
Right.
And then...
But even then, I was guesstimating. I was like...
Talking to Black Jesus. Yeah, so I mean, like, yes, for those reasons... Like my niece did that to me, too, Maya.
Oh, geez. I remember the story, too. Was it a race?
I had the... No. She brought me... She had made brownies, and when we had moved her into that apartment, and to thank it, she had brought me a brownie. Didn't tell me the potency. I ate, again, like half of it. and had to like call off work the next day because I took it before I went to bed, and I woke up and I was like still not in a good place.
Okay.
Actually, when I woke up, I was fine, but I was so bad. Like it was one of those things where I had to go to bed because that was the only thing that felt safe. And then when I got in bed, the bed was literally spinning. So I guess I just talked myself into better quality control for cannabis. Yeah, like, so it's good, it's important, but at the end of the day, I don't care. Just make sure it's clean and it does what I want it to do, and I can sleep at night. That's what I need.
Yeah, I hear you. But anyway, it passed, again, convincingly. I think, roughly 60-40, maybe it was more like 55.
Why aren't we high right now? Shouldn't we be high to celebrate?
You know what?
This show brought to you by Steve and Jim. High as fuck. No,
I was thinking about it. This is bringing back another memory too. I offered to bring a pre-roll that I got from a Michigan dispensary, and my Facebook flashback came. Do you remember we were at the bar we just had lunch at, and we're sitting there like, someone fucking reeks of weed, and this dude gets up, walks away, the smell goes away, he comes back, and then
the dude from Colorado,
the guy from Colorado who's the cannabis church guy who told us he flew from Denver to Cleveland with 5 pounds of weed in his carry-on bag.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if he's telling the truth.
I have no idea if he was telling the truth. I don't
But he smelled like he would.
Right. Like there was I had a lot of questions about him before we even got to that part. His whole thing of why he was here felt odd. And not that I didn't believe him, but man, the whole conversation just generated a lot of questions.
Right. That was, by the way, 4 years ago today. Because it popped up in my Facebook. Crazy. 4 years ago.
But yeah, so issue 2 passes. I think, I will say good job, Ohio. Ohio is a red state, conservative in some parts, but I don't even know if Ohio is actually truly a conservative state. And what I mean by that is like, yeah, you got a lot of Trump voters, but I think you got a lot of people who are Trump voters. And I think this goes for the party in general. I don't think that they really, you do have true believers, right? Like, and there's more true believers than I think I would care to admit, or that's good, but you do have some true believers that, when I say true believers, that believe Trump may have been sent by God sort of deal.
Oh, yeah,
right?
They exist.
And that's scary. But I also think that you got a lot of people out there who just like the fact that Trump kind of gives a middle finger to everybody on the left and to establishment and all that other stuff. They don't necessarily... they don't talk about the policies. They don't give a fuck about the policies. They even maybe know that a lot of the policies are trash. They know that Trump is bullshit, but they just like the fact that he pisses off the left. He pisses off Democrats. He pisses off the woke people. They hate the woke. Right?
He's not politically correct. He says the things I'd love to be able to say.
Like, it's just like, I could sit down and have a beer with him. Like, for so many reasons you couldn't. Right? Like, that man doesn't want to even touch you. You shake his hand, he immediately uses hand sanitizer because you disgust him. But, okay, sure, you think you can have a beer with him. Like, the guy literally shits on a gold toilet and has his name written on a plane. But, again, you think he's relatable because he talks and rambles like a psychopath about nonsensical stuff and says, hey, woke is bad or whatever.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of people who just buy into that concept. But then when they're faced with issues like issue 1, right, if you're, a 35, 40, 45-something woman, right, who's made it up the ranks in the career world or whatever, and you don't want that derailed by pregnancy or you've had or whatever your attachment to this is.
Right.
You may not openly talk about abortion in your little MAGA clique, but I guarantee you there are a lot of people in that MAGA clique, in that MAGA group, women who post all sorts of nonsensical shit, that when they got in a booth by themselves, they said, yes, on issue 1.
I'm sure you're right. I wanted to say this earlier. If I already did, I apologize. But we've said 100 times the Democrats fuck themselves with how they handle issues related to guns.
Yes.
I think this is issue...
This is the same thing.
Yes, okay.
This is the same thing for conservatives, right?
Yes.
Because it's like, look, it's an issue that is killing you at the polls.
Yes.
Right? And I get your attachment to this, whether it's moral, religious, whatever. But ultimately, and I say this about Democrats too, like if eventually, like in order to impose your will, right? Like if I relating it to sports, because that's what I know best, right? if I wanna beat the other team, I still got to play within the rules as they are, and then I can reset those rules. Right, I can play by my terms once I'm established in the game. But you can't. Right. You can't be on the outside looking in and say, well, I'm just going to change it because I don't like it. If you ain't got the numbers and no one else is supporting it, you're not going to be able to change shit. If you can't get people into office, right, then you're not going to have the impact that you want to have just because because Donald Trump can throw a big fucking rally, right? That's not what changes laws. Sorry, and this is what I say to Democrats all the time. You can talk about all the protests and your Black Lives Matter and all that other stuff, and yeah, it gets a lot of media attention, but ultimately that's not what changes law. The laws change in the courtroom. The laws change on the congressional floors of the Senate and the Congress. You got to get people in those rooms who have the ability to affect that change, right? And trying to do that and trying to get into those rooms using piss and vinegar and everything else, not nice. Because you feel that you should be able to say what the fuck you want and still get the votes that you need. That is not how the fuck this game is played. And you are learning, Democrats learned that the hard with all the defund the police and Black Lives Matter. You went through that whole thing, right? Now, fortunately, in this particular instance, that MAGA, Trump, and everybody else was so fucking bad that you ended up not getting the bloodbath that you probably should have gotten. But
you talking on the 2022 elections?
Or? Yeah, I'm talking about the 2020 and 2022, right?
Okay, sure.
But, like here's an instance where, like, and one of the things that kills Democrats is guns, right? And I've said it time and time again. All Democrats have to do, they flip their stance on guns, they never lose another fucking election, right? Republicans, you flip your stance on abortion. You don't even have to flip it. You just say, look, we're pro-choice, all right? We don't believe in it. We're not going to do it. But we can't impose our will upon you. Right? And if the Democrats just took that same stance with guns, I don't like guns. I think they're scary. I think AR-15, right? Like, and we've been through the whole thing about the comparison of AR-15 and different types of rifles that look less scary but have the same sort of impact. Like, you could not like them. You could have your opinion on them. But ultimately, then if you don't want them, you don't have them. But you're not going to stop me from having them, right?
Right.
Same thing with abortion. You don't like them, don't have them. But don't stop somebody else because of your shit.
And back to it being a losing thing for them, I think a lot of younger women who would typically vote conservative, and I know a few personally, that was an issue that they never thought would get taken away from them. Trump, every time I've heard him speak recently, one of the things he brags about is, I got rid of Roe v. Wade. They tried for 25 years to do it and couldn't, and I got it done. You're bragging about that. Good for you. It makes your rallies great.
But what I will say is, what Democrats did do, especially here in Ohio, they did it right. They just let Republicans hang themselves. There was no major media. The media push here in Ohio on issue 1 was just like, hey, what they're saying isn't accurate. This is what it is. Here you go. This is what it is. Right? Those guys, they're saying crazy shit. This is all it is. Right? This is what we're saying. Right? We're not going to force you to. We're not going to get you pregnant and then force you to have an abortion because they were damn close. Like DeWine was damn near saying that, right? With some of the shit that he had, like Governor DeWine, who I gave a lot of good marks for his response to COVID, has in my book has kind of gone the wrong direction. And maybe it's true colors or it's what he always was. But what I can say is that I thought he handled COVID well here in Ohio. But what I can say is a lot of what I've seen from him after has been very, back to the party, back to the base, and I'm going to do, whatever makes the conservative Republicans happy. Okay, fine. That's your party. Do your thing. But him and his wife had a commercial talking about, people having abortions up until the day of birth and like just spreading all the, they were blatant lies, right? Just blatant. And the Democrats did it great. They went through and said, that ain't true. That ain't true. That ain't true. Here's the document. This is what it is. Like, these people are crazy. I don't know what to tell you. Right? And I
didn't see that commercial.
Well, I mean,
someone told me it looked like his wife was reading a hostage note.
Yeah, it did. I mean, his wife was just like sitting there, like it was crazy. But I thought the Democrats played this well. They kept it simple. They kept it straight, and it was the right message for this particular issue. And now they need to start to think about how to string that together. If we have to be stuck with Joe Biden, then they need to figure out how the messaging will work to make sure that they can keep him in office. Now, their argument is like, look, what we did last time worked. In 2020, he's president. And he could be facing the same opponent, so we got this. And a lot of that is right, but listen, it was still close.
Yes.
A lot of your swing states are polling stronger to Trump. I don't trust these polls nearly as much because I just think that there's too much bias, and it's hard to figure out which ones are which. But they can't rest on their hands because of yesterday. Right, like they can't take the election results from yesterday and say everything is going our way, we're good. Like they have to figure out a way to really start to ramp things up, but not fuck it up. And
I don't know a single Democrat that I've spoken to that is encouraged or is excited about Biden running again. I mean, my mom is as left wing as they get, and she said to me a year and change ago, like this guy. A lot of people are saying, we're happy with what's gone on under your administration. Good job, Joe. You're not the firebrand that Trump is, obviously. You're not, the face of everything that happens under your administration, which is how the job is supposed to be. It shouldn't be all about me, but we've had 4 years of a guy who, like you said, shits on a golden toilet and has his name slapped on everything. But yeah, Biden has shown some severe cognitive decline. That doesn't get better. And there are people now talking about challenging him. One of them is that Minnesota congressman whose name I fucking forgot already, Dean Phillips, I believe. But he was Bill Maher's guest this week, and the fact that I watched him and guy seems logical, guy seems reasonable, and I had already forgotten his name by the time we got to do our show.
I mean, we'll see how it goes, right? Like we'll see if are there serious challenges that are brought, does he actually have to face someone in a primary? I think we could talk about it then. But it's hard for me to really dig into him being primaried until there's an actual
challenger.
An actual challenger, right? Like you've got the guy from Minnesota, but the Democratic Party, the DNC, they're going to do whatever they can do to protect Biden, it seems. So I don't feel like this guy is going to get a fair shot. Whether he should or not, I don't know. But they're not going to let it happen, right?
But do you agree, though, that a lot of folks on the left are saying, great job, Joe, we're glad you were there, but you need to hang it up. I know it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Right? Like, so
and that's his ego. That's his ego playing in, right? I mean...
well, yeah. I mean, now, it doesn't have to be, because the DNC could say, yeah, you guys are right. We should probably mix this up a little bit. Like, appreciate you, Joe. You kind of helped to stabilize things somewhat, even though we're on the brink of World War III. Israel is at war with Palestine and maybe all the Middle East. Russia is doing whatever the fuck they want with Ukraine right now, which is a train wreck. We're not sure what North Korea is going to do, and the whole thing with China and Taiwan is about to blow.
Things are great.
Interest rates are through the roof, and we've got maybe a possible civil war brewing on the ground here, but you have done a bang-up job to this point.
This cheerful thought brought to you by... I mean, nothing you said is wrong.
It's just the reality. It's just like, look, he's done a lot of good things, but let's not poo-poo the situation. We are in a fucking shitstorm.
Oh, absolutely.
That you can't blame on Trump, right? Like some of it, maybe I'm sure Trump's fingerprints are somewhere in there. No. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
But a lot of the shit, and it's not necessarily Biden's fault either. Like Hamas deciding that they were going to go in and start killing Israelis, that's not on Biden. But it happened on his watch, and now he's in a situation where there are people who are like, hey, we voted for you, but now you're supporting Israel, who are slaughtering my family and my cousins, and now I can't support you.
That's going to be... Right? I mean, I thought Biden did a good job of, when he spoke after the October 7th attacks, I thought Biden did a great job. But at the same time, there's no right.
There's no right or wrong, but that's just the reality that we're facing. The whole situation with Ukraine, you've shoveled billions of dollars over there, and that war is still going on. It's long. You and I agree that Russia needs to be beaten and beaten back. But what is going on? We're sending them on average, feels like $1 billion a month, if not more. And that's not just straight cash, homie, right? It's weapons, it's training, it's supplies and support and everything else, but still we're sending a lot over there. Now Israel needs shit. Do we have it to send to them? Also, is that the right play? How much of your base are you losing through, support of Israel and not, pushing harder for a ceasefire sooner? It is a messy situation, and there's plenty to look at and start to kind of grade him on, and just like, how is he doing? Right, because he did do some good things with the infrastructure bill and getting some getting some things moving to kind of get the economy back moving the right direction, and we're slowly starting to see a pullback on those interest rates and inflation numbers. But I'm not just saying he's done this great job and he should definitely automatically be the president again in the next 4 years.
No, I completely agree with you. But I don't even know a single person who is typically a Democratic voter that is encouraged or excited about Biden. And then ask the question, who do you want? No one has an answer. And that you can put me in that category. I mean, I do have a few people I'd like to explore more, but there's really no option being put out there. And that's why Dean Phillips is
Yeah, and my issue is viability, right? With the candidate. Like, I people look at Gavin Newsom, I'm like, he's not viable. Gavin Newsom will get destroyed against anybody on the right because
I don't agree with that.
Fine, I'll take my record of this shit over yours. He will get destroyed. Sorry.
Well, you're doing that based on the notion.
His record of governor will be plastered everywhere, and all they will do is show pictures of homeless people shitting on the street in San Francisco. Just pull anybody's taxes from California on what they're fucking paying, right? And then you mix that with some of the weird shit that's gone on with him and the women that he's dated and been involved with, right? It's the perfect mix of policy, money, and drama that will have that guy, he would get whitewashed, right? I know he's got the look and everybody thinks it's great, but I'm telling you, they would drag him into the mud and he don't stand a chance in hell. That's why he's not actually being one of the people that's challenging, because someone got to him and said, no, Gavin, you stay your punk ass right here in California.
Well, I mean, nothing you said is wrong in terms of they'll drag him like that. The reason I don't think he's dead on the water is because if he's running against Trump, the people who will see that stuff and go, look what these liberals are doing to destroy cities, people will push back just as hard the other way and say,
why? And I'm going to put you in this category.
All right.
But why did you motherfuckers shove Joe Biden down my throat in 2020?
Because he could win.
Why could he win?
Because he wasn't Trump. He was likable.
No. Remember, there were 40 other people who weren't Trump. Why was it him over everyone else?
He's establishment.
Right? But because he was an establishment guy, works, so he reaches across the aisle, right? Gavin Newsom isn't any of those things. Gavin Newsom has no track record of being what we said we had to have when we got Joe Biden, right? He's not that. He's the opposite of that, right? Now, he's not as extreme on the left, right, as Trump and MAGA and everybody else over there is, but he's not that, and he's not a very seasoned politician, right? He's he's a Reagan politician at best, right? And I don't think we want to do that again just with a Democrat. Like, I don't think that guy does nearly the numbers that everyone thinks that he would do in this race. I think he gets his fucking dick dragged through the mud, and we end up, and that's Trump wins by a landslide. You put that guy in there. The only thing that could save you is if Trump gets thrown in jail.
Which very well could happen.
Well, not on this.
Well, not on what? He's currently in court because of a civil.
Not while, I mean, the current case
is, yes,
that he just testified for him and Ivanka is civil.
Right.
That case has already been decided. This is all just to figure out what the kind of,
how much money is
what
going to cost
the impact is going to be. Yeah.
But he's got other indictments.
He's got three other indictments in 3 other states. 2 of them are federal.
Yep.
91 counts.
And that's our president, our former president. And so Trump in court is doing exactly what I think we all knew he would do, and that is acting like he's on a campaign rally and just being.
Well, I think there's more to it than that, right? I think they know that they're in a bad spot in this case. And I think Trump's thought process is to try to pull out of the judge all that like anger and disdain and bias, right? Like, so he feels, and the judge, like, now what's killing the judge? Well, let me go through this. Trump feels, and he's probably right, that the judge doesn't like him, has a bias against him. So Trump's play is, I'm going to do everything I can in that courtroom to get this person, right, just to go off the rails and give me something that I can appeal, right, when this decision all goes down, to show the bias and actually win on, right? Like, so he's willing to risk aggravating the judge, pissing the judge off, having a worse sentence, because he feels like if he can get that judge to react and do something that just doesn't sit right on the bench, that gets the judge's hand slapped, they can take that, use that on appeal to get it overturned, and go from there, right? I think that's the play. Why he was, but the judge was smart, and they were able to kind of keep their shit, hold their mud, as one of my coaches used to say, to keep guys from jumping off sides. But I think it's their last resort. It's definitely their last resort. They don't have much else. Like I said, the case has already been decided against them. This is more just, all right, what's the penalty going to be? And I think that they're trying to get something appealable, because they think the penalty is going to be, you're going to likely lose your ability to do business in New York. And while they don't do great business in New York, these deals are bad deals, and they survive off of just loopholes and smoke and mirrors. As an organization, they can't lose that stronghold in New York, so they're I think going to extremes to try to save it. As for why he's under indictment, I think it's interesting, right? How conservatives are really trying to sweep this under the rug. They're like, there was no victim. How is that even a crime to falsify your net worth and falsify like the value of assets? It's not that big of a deal. They paid the loans back. Like, the only reason they got the loans is because they falsified the information, and that's fucking fraud. It's basic, right? Like, you got, like, where they got Ivanka today was, can you read this document, right? And she's like, okay. So she reads it, right? And what the document said was, like, oh, Ivanka, based off of the materials that you submitted, we would be happy to work with you on getting a loan. Right, and so she reads it, and they're like, "Do you?" And she's like, "Yeah, I remember that." And they're like, "Okay." So that letter was based off of this loan application. This loan application, you evaluated these assets at X. They're only worth this, right? You said that the OPEX were this, but they were actually this. They were much higher, right? Like, so the value of that particular asset that you're using, that you're trying to get a loan on, is not what you presented. So the question is, if you actually use the true value of the asset, do you still get the loan at those same terms, at those same rate? And because everyone's saying, well, they were able to pay it back. They were able to pay it back because did they get a favorable interest rate because of the overinflated value? Like, these are the sort of things that fucking matter. Just because you don't want them to matter because it's your guy who did it and is going down for it doesn't change the fact that it's still the law. Right? And this idea that, oh, well, they're just going after Trump because it's Trump and he's so great. No, he is showing you how he's been committing fraud for a long time that a lot of people have gone to jail for. Not just him. Just because you don't know and you don't pay attention and you don't have fucking 2 pieces of rice to rub together for a brain doesn't make it untrue that this is a crime that he has committed, right? And fortunately for you guys, like this, or him and everybody else, this is civil, but there are criminal elements to this as well that likely will come back to bite him. So,
So you said a minute ago that the judge probably is biased against him, and I agree with you.
Yes.
I think and the analogy I've been giving to people.
Here's what I'll say it. The judge's wife is like live tweeting at home during this and saying some not pleasant things about Trump, and that's a bad look.
That's a terrible look.
Right? Like, what did we say about Ginny Thomas?
Exactly.
Right, Ginny Thomas, what's the Clarence Thomas's wife?
Thurman Thomas's wife is my woman. I've met
Clarence Thomas's wife, all the shit she did around January 6th and, prior to leading up, people want her investigated because of her trying to manipulate the situation. You've got this judge. It's not the same. It's nearly not the same. Not even close to the same. This woman just live tweeting that she doesn't, basically hates Trump and blah, blah, blah. But it's still a bad look that the judge needs to get a hold of. Like, hey, fuck you doing? Give me your phone for the rest of this fucking trial, you dipshit. Stop. That's the sort of conversation that likely needs to happen. Now, no husband should talk to his wife like that, fear of being stabbed. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. But what I was going to say is the bias here may be real, but the analogy I've been using is if you drive 40 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone right by a police station, probably nothing's going to happen to you. If you are blaring "fuck the police" and have doing double middle fingers out the window, driving 40 miles an hour, suddenly they're going to go, you know what? This guy's being an asshole. Would we normally pull over for 5 over the speed limit? No. But fuck this guy. We're doing it. And you know what? The law's on our side.
Yep.
Trump has been bragging about fucking with the rules since I've known who the guy was in my teens.
Yep.
And now chickens are coming home to roost. Now it's like, well, you've been giving us the finger for so long.
It's just like the argument people say, I don't understand how Trump lost. There's 80 million of us that voted for him.
Right.
All right. Well, the only problem is that you got 180 or 200 million eligible registered voters in the United States, right? Which means that if 80 million voted for Trump, and you've got 107, even if you've got 170 registered, so 170 million registered voters, then that
90 million.
90 million people didn't like him. Right? Yeah. For every, you had that many people plus some who didn't vote for him, right? And if you take that fact, right, that you've got all these people who did, which means if you can get that many people to like you, you can get that many plus people to dislike you. And the way he talks about, you know what? DOJ didn't do what I wanted them to do in this particular. Fuck them. The Attorney General of New York that said something I didn't like. Fuck her. Fuck the law. Fuck everybody who doesn't like Trump. If you don't kiss my balls the way I want you to, then fuck you. I'm going to try to hurt you. I'm going to tell you I'm coming after you, and you're stuck, and you're racist, and blah, blah, blah. Nobody like whatever. You can only do that shit for so long, and then you start to feel the wrath. And you can say, that's not fair. I don't like it. Guess what? No one gives a fuck. Evidenced by the fact why he's got 4 indictments across the fucking country.
Yeah.
Right? And guess what? He if he goes down through this one is just the tip of the iceberg. This isn't even criminal. This isn't even about him going to jail, folks.
Right.
The people down in Georgia are not they don't give a fuck about MAGA, all that other stuff. It was cool, right? When it was before he came into their state and started to fuck with them. Then all of a sudden, then they got serious, and all that MAGA bullshit went right out the window. And that whole state is, short of Marjorie Taylor Greene, is now gunning for him. I would say Herschel Walker, but Herschel Walker doesn't even live in Georgia. He lives in Texas.
Correct.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Fair. And also, Herschel Walker is absurdly stupid, to quote one Dave Chappelle. I can't miss a chance to get that in there. All right, want to wrap this up?
Wrap it up.
We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram, X, and Threads. Thanks for listening. We're done.